Hello, everybody. How are you today? I hope you've had a good day and a good start to the week. So thank you for coming along today and for sharing your valuable time. I hope we'll have a really productive session this evening on one of my favourite topics, escape games. So I'd love to make this as interactive as possible. So if you'd like to take part and answer questions in the chat box, you've already been super busy in the chat box already, that would be great. But if you've had a tough day, if you'd rather take it easy and just listen and read, then please do that. It's your webinar and it's your choice. And as we've just said, you'll get a PDF of the slides with all the references later. So you don't need to take notes if you want to. It's up to you. So let me tell you what is coming up then in our webinar and what we're going to do over the next hour. So first of all, we will look at what escape games actually are, and we'll look at their structure and flow within Breakout. Then look at techniques and points to remember. So this is more practical. We'll give more information about the content, so the topics and the language that appears in Breakout. We'll look at the advantages of escape games. I saw lots of great answers to that question, escape games are, at the beginning. So we'll look at some of those and we'll look at some practical ideas for things to do in the classroom. Then finally, we'll have a question and answer stage. And I'll give you my details. So if you have a question at any time, you can just reach out and we'll solve it together. So let's look at our very first section then, introducing escape games in the Breakout series. So yeah, before we actually look at escape games, let's get a definition of what an escape game actually is. As I said, I've already seen a few nice answers to that question, that sentence, escape games are. So we'll work on that definition through a little enigma, much like an escape game that appears in the books. So for this first activity, if you'd like to take part, I need to put you into 4 groups. So if your birthday is in January, February or March, you're in group 1. If your birthday is in April, May or June, you're in group 2. If your birthday is in July, August and September, you're in group 3. And guess what? You're in group 4 if your birthday is in October, November or December. So those are our 4 groups. Group 1, January to March. 2, April, May, June. 3, July, August, September. 4, October, November, December. So can you have a look at your particular puzzle? Group 1, Group 2, Group 3, Group 4. Can you work out what that word is? And could you type it in the chat box? And if you want, I do have 3 clues, again, very much like the Breakout escape games. So I can give you a clue if you'd like. If you'd like a clue, just ask in the chat box and I will give you 1 clue, or 2 clues, or 3 clues. Oh, we've got an answer already for group 3. Thank you, Sandra. I think you were in there quickest. We've got an answer for group 4. Ulrika, I think you were first. And Doris, I think first for group 1. Did we have one for group 2? Margarita, I hope I pronounced your name correctly. So we've got some answers in there. Lovely, thank you. So I'm going to pop the clues in the chat box just so you can see those as an example of something that your students would have in a breakout, some clues to help you along the way in case you do need a bit of extra help on a tired Monday evening. Let's show you the answers now. And here they are. So we've got decipher, language, multiple, and students. So as you've seen with this little activity, it's kind of a bit of a puzzle, a bit of an enigma. It's a bit about language. It's a bit about revising known language. So if your code starts working out L-A-N-G, maybe you'll guess it's the word language and you'll recall how to spell it and you'll be able to write it. It's a bit about using logical skills. So you've already deciphered what number 15 is, and that's an E, 1-5 becomes E. Then if that number 15 comes up again, you don't need to use that cipher and that code again because you already know it's an E. So you're using your critical and your thinking skills as well to work on this puzzle. So now As we've successfully got our 4 words, we're going to use these words, decipher, language, multiple, and students to complete that definition for escape games. So now I need you 4 groups to work together, use those 4 words, and complete this definition. Have a read and have a think which words go where. And when you're ready, put it in the chat box if you'd like. I think we have an answer for all 4. Would anyone else like to try? Okay, we've got 2 then. So I think Micah, I hope I've pronounced your name correctly, and Jessica, and now Emily also. We've got some answers. Lovely. You're very speedy and good with your typing. I'm such an inaccurate typist, so I'm very impressed. Thank you so much. That's brilliant. Shall I show you the answers then? So here we are with the answers complete. So number 1, as correctly guessed, students. 2, multiple. 3, language. 4, decipher. So putting all these together, then we've got a little definition for escape games. Escape games are problem-based activities that require students to employ multiple skills, e.g. critical thinking, language, and collaborate with peers to solve a problem, e.g. solve a riddle, decipher a clue, and thereby escape the problem, usually within a time limit. So I think this is quite a nice little definition. It covers everything. I think most of the characteristics about escape games. I just wanted to really quickly mention the word games, because sometimes I feel like that is, I don't know, maybe a bit misleading, or it can kind of devalue an activity. It can sound a bit aimless, no significant outcome, something you do in the last 5 minutes of a lesson. But let me reassure you, the escape games are full of all the good stuff we want for your students, and they absolutely have educational validity. So for me, they allow you to enrich your classes, to motivate your students. You can step away from that monotony of the traditional language classroom and your regular coursebook and supplement it with something really fun, but still educational. You can still practice all the grammar rules you need, all the language you need, but in a more spontaneous and purposeful way. It's interactive and it's immersive, so you get to use all those really important interpersonal skills that we want our teens to develop. You can also reduce the formalities and the fear of speaking in class. I think that's a real key thing with escape games. It makes it a bit more informal, a bit more accessible for everyone. And all of this means you can create that safe, positive, welcoming, maybe even fun atmosphere for your students. But don't just listen to me. This is borne out by research. So there's a lot of quite good research into escape games now. And here I've just pulled out the 3 main themes and advantages shown by research. So research into escape games shows they provide a motivating combination of content and game. Engage students with the learning process without realization. I think this is probably my favorite points, that there's almost an incidental secret learnings happening, but they're not quite aware of it. So it's really lovely and natural and quite organic. And the final point, increasing academic performance and knowledge acquisition. So it's going to be a positive addition to your syllabus. And again, I'll give you the references for these studies in your PDF later. So if you want to read a bit more about those 3 studies and some others, then you can do that later. So we've got our definition kind of sorted, I think, now for escape games. So shall we move on to the more practical parts then of the webinar? So now we're going to look at techniques and points to remember when using escape games in your class. So for this, I would like to use this little acronym, BREAKOUT, to frame those techniques and points to remember. So we've got one different technique or point for each of those letters. And our first letter is, of course, the letter B. And it's B for bonding. So we know the importance of bonding and rapport, but it's not just teacher to students, it's student to student. And for me, this underpins every successful classroom experience. So for me, it's right that this should be here at the top, our very first letter, B for bonding. And as I just mentioned, we want to create that safe, positive, welcoming atmosphere for each and every one of our students in the class. And we want to have that cohesive group. I wanted to mention another little bit of research here related to groups, and this is about group dynamics. So this actually isn't from second language research, it's from organizational psychology, but boy, is it relevant to our field of language learning. So we know that escape games are a natural and easy thing to do in the classroom. It can explore and promote group cohesion. But Dornier, the late Dornier, identified 6 elements that contribute to group cohesion. So we've got number 1, learning about each other, because we want our students to bond and to respect their differences and to learn about this multicultural world in which we live. Proximity and interaction. So just like we're doing now, we're here together, same place, same time. 3, cooperation. I love this one. So this is working towards that common goal. And if you're working in a group trying to fix and solve an escape game, there's your goal. 4, intergroup competition. And so maybe that common goal is actually to win that escape game, to complete it before that group over there. Or maybe that competition is simply to work out what the answer is on that worksheet or find the clue, or it could be quite a small little thing to aim for. Number 5, joint hardship. So we said at the beginning, escape games are challenging. That's the point. They're fun, but you're going to work for it. 6, immersive activities. We've mentioned this before as well, that even though this is a paper escape game, if you like, it's in a book, rather than a physical escape game that students have to physically escape, it's still got that immersive quality. There's still a situation in a world that we're inviting them to imagine and to step into. So it's time for a quick question before our next letter. Here we are. Sorry, let me just go on. Here we are. So ready to go. Can you complete this little question or this little sentence? Sorry. I have plenty of spare time and energy to fully prepare my lessons. Yes, maybe, or no. Oh, Katerina was straight in there with no. And there's capital. Yichin, your answer made me laugh. Capitals, no. Maybe. There's a few maybes. What I'm not seeing, though, is any yeses at the moment. There's another maybe. So as a rough guess, I'm saying, I don't know, maybe 2/3 or more than that is saying no to that answer. I'm just going to pop in my answer. No, there's never enough time to fully prepare the lessons. So let me jump back a slide and give you that letter. It's R, and it's for ready to go, because we don't have enough time to fully prepare our lessons. A teacher's clock seems to be far quicker than anybody else's clock. There's never really enough time. But the good thing here is escape games really are quite ready to go. You won't have to do lots and lots of preparation for this. Let me show you a bit more about what the structure of the Breakout series is, and then we can go through a worksheet and I'll show you how easy it is to prepare and how easy it is to teach. So the Breakout series goes across 3 levels, from A1, A2, A2, B1, B1, B2. And the B1, B2, that 3rd level, that's out next Monday, Monday the 30th of September. Each of those 3 levels has 20 escape games in it. And each of those escape games has a topic and a language point. It consists of 3 worksheets. They might be numbered 1, 2, and 3, or they might be numbered 1, 2A and 2B. And there are teacher's notes for each one. That's got the rationale behind the situation for the escape games. It's got information about the language focus. It's got the codes and the clues to help your students complete the games. It's got the solutions, because we all need that because they're quite challenging activities. And we've got some differentiation ideas for stronger or less strong classes. So what you have to do before your class is look for a topic or a language point that you want to use. So that might be very similar to one that's already in your course book. It might be something completely different but topical, your choice. You're going to scan through those teacher notes, check out those solutions, differentiation activities if you'd like them. You're going to photocopy the worksheets and you're going to go to class. And this is how the worksheet will flow when you're in class. So the first thing you're going to do, in fact, your main job really, is to give that situation and problem. That's that blue box on the left. So you're going to introduce the situation to your students. You're going to give them the instructions about what they need to do. And then you're going to observe and monitor and see how your students cope with it. If they need some help, that's fine. They can ask you. You'll see in that grey box at the bottom, you've got up to 3 clues to give your students. So if you remember when we did that activity at the beginning, I put you into 4 groups and I popped 3 clues into the chat box for you. You'll have clues like that to give to your students. Hopefully then your students will use those clues and they'll move towards the next box, which is solution. And then when they've got the solution, they've got the code they need to unlock the padlock. And there's a cute little padlock symbol underneath. You'll see there's 3 boxes there because students need to complete that with 3 numbers or 3 letters, and then they're finished. It's time to move on to the next stage of the escape game, which is the next worksheet. And then we go through that flow again. So let me show you how this works on an actual worksheet from the book. So this one, as you can see, we start right at the top there. If you've seen that kind of tinted, greeny, bluey box, there's your situation. That's what you present to your class. Then you can see in bold, there's the question, can you solve the puzzle? Who is in the photo? And then at the bottom, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, those enigmas for your students to solve. And then down below there, right across the bottom, what is the missing code? Write the numbers and unlock the padlock. So students use their solution to find 3 numbers, write those in the padlock, and if they're correct, we proceed to the next worksheet. So that's a rough flow of each worksheet, 3 worksheets within each escape game. So we've looked at letter B for bonding, we've looked at R for ready to go. So our next letter therefore is E, and that's E for equality. So I feel there's a real move recently in the last few years for language teaching to seek for greater representation for each and every one of our learners. That's something I fully support. And this is something you'll see in the escape games. Let me show you some examples of different types of equality here. So in this one, this is about a family unit. And if you look at the pictures on the left, we've got the 2 males as parents and caregivers, and then we've got the rest of their family. In the middle, we've got the teenage skater son. Then we've got the 2 babies. And then on the right, we've got the fur babies, 2 dogs. In this next one, now we're looking at sport with different physical abilities. So we've got swimming, we've got wheelchair tennis, we've got cricket, we've got athletics, we've got football. And if you have a look down in the bottom at that cute little padlock again, WS worksheet 2B. So for this one, this worksheet is a pair work activity, A and B, and it's a spot the difference activity, which is an example of an escape game that's quite close to a regular language game. It's nothing too controversial or scary or different. And this is another one that's quite similar to a regular language activity because it's a matching activities here, where students have to work out which goes with which. And in this one, we see equality through ethnicity and intellectual abilities within the same friendship group. So, as I mentioned, that's a matching activity, kind of a regular language practice activity. Let's look at something that isn't. And this is a bit more like the one we looked at the beginning. So this one has an enigma and a puzzle there to solve. It's also still another example of equality, as this is a situation of online gaming friends and one's from Nigeria. So we've got the backdrop there of a country that isn't often represented in materials, and we've got some facts about the country. So your students will be improving their knowledge and learning more about the real world in which we live in. I chose this particular one in order to show the challenging nature of it, because if we look closely there, in that enigma, at that circle, you can see the gaps in the middle ring of the circle. and there are 5 items in the middle. If you look, there are 5 sentences. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So not 1 activity, but 5 here. And then you need the answer to all of those 5 to unlock that padlock at the bottom. So this is the tricky one. Does that mean it's too difficult for your students, or is it too easy? Which brings me to the next letter. We've done B for bonding, R, ready to go, E, equality, and A is adaptability. So was that escape game too difficult? We'll have a look at it in a minute. At the moment, I want to think about all escape games and think about how adaptable they are to use. So you could think about when and how you use your escape games. So when, you could use an escape game before that language point or before that topic in your regular course book. So for example, maybe you hypothesize that your students already know this language point, they've got quite good competence at it, or you might think this is a topic that they probably know quite a lot of language about. If that's true, fantastic. You're going to test, teach, test, use that escape game to see if your hypothesis is true. And whatever the result, it's great. If your hypothesis is true, your students know the topic, they've got some good vocabulary there, they use the language point competently, fantastic. You've proved that. You can move on and choose another one. But if they're not quite competent or confident with that language point, if they want to know more about that topic, then great. You've identified that need, and now you can provide the help your students need. Or do you want to use your escape game after you've covered a language point and a topic in your class? Because remember that iteration and that recycling and that reviewing is all part of language learning. So this is a great way to use an escape game to revise through a different task type, a different interaction, different modality, a different experience of your students to use this language point. So we can use them before or after. It's up to you when you use them, but how about how you use them? So you could, we know that escape games consist of 3 worksheets. You could devote a whole lesson to one escape game and go through those 3 worksheets. Or you could spread it out, maybe over a week, maybe over a couple of weeks, a month, whatever is best for your own contact time with your students. You could spread them out. So maybe you do 1 worksheet every week, 1 worksheet every lesson. It's up to you. Or you could have a carousel situation where you have your students into different groups, and those different groups do their own escape game. Each group has a different escape game. You can set a time limit so everybody works to the same time limit, but they've got to finish that escape game within those number of minutes. And then when those minutes are up and the bell has rung, students swap round and they start a new escape game. So that's a way you can maybe try it. And finally, teacher's notes, that differentiation. So remember, with each escape game that you'll have, there'll be differentiation notes, something to extend the games and deal with fast finishes or provide help. So let's now go back to that worksheet with this circle. How could we make it easier? How could we make it more difficult? So we know that that full code isn't quite given there in the circle. So if you want to, you could add in all those missing numbers in that middle circle. There were 5 activities we know in the middle, those 5 sentences. So you could put students into a group of 5 and each student works on only one of the items at a time. We know that there are 3 clues. So if you want to, you could give all 3 clues to your students at the beginning, at the start of the activity. And if you want, you could use the first language to explain or help a little bit, if that's appropriate for your context. So those are ways to make it easier, but how can we make it more difficult? You could remove even more numbers or even more letters from that circle. You could gap, so remove another word from those 5 sentences in the middle. So you might remove the word country from 1, the words capital city from 2, river from 3, currency from 4, food from 5, and then give your students, that means they're going to have to do some extra work to complete that escape game and recall some vocabulary. You could set a short time limit, or you could add an additional homework activity. So maybe students research more facts about Nigeria or create a fact file for another country of their choice. So We've done bonding, we've done ready to go, we've done equality, we've done adaptability. So our next letter is the letter K. So could I ask you in the chat box, what do you think the next point or technique might be beginning with the letter K? Any ideas? And all ideas are welcome. They may or may not be the same as mine, but knowledge. Interesting. Is everyone going for knowledge? So Nina's going for knowledge. Sandra also does. Oh, kinesthetic. That's a lovely one, Camilla. I like that one. You can tell I like it so much. It's not on my slides, and I wish it was. Kickoff. That's a fun one. Got any more ideas before I move on to the next letter? Kindness. Oh, I love that one, Carolina. Yes, yeah, lovely. So I've chosen knowledge as well. Great minds think alike and all of that. So we know that students will be using their language skills, and we know that they'll be using their interpersonal skills in the escape games, but students also get to expand their knowledge on a variety of topics. We just saw there's different examples of equality and the country of Nigeria. Let me show you some of the topics for the 3 levels. So don't worry about trying to read all of these. There's quite a lot of them there. But have a quick scan through, and as you can see, there's a lot of variety there. And we've got some progression in maturity and sophistication as we go up the levels, moving from left to right, and up those age groups. So we've got some traditional topics, and we've got some modern topics. We've got to focus on different English-speaking countries. We've got equality topics, obviously, there. We've got women's rights, Indigenous people. Are there any there that you fancy trying with your students? Does anything stand out that you'd like? Christmas Carol. That's one of my favourites, Katharina. American English and British is great. They all look really interesting. Tongue twisters, yeah, I love tongue twisters. They're one of those things that you just know is going to be fun in classroom, and no one's going to be brilliant at them. Halloween's good, family and friends, gaming. Oh, lovely. So there's lots of different things that everyone's grabbing. The social media, yes, mythical animals. That's always fun. I think that also works whatever the age level as well. It seems to interest so many different people. US politics, very interesting at the moment. International food, okay, lovely. Music, so there's lots there that appeals. That's fantastic. That's really good to know. Okay, can I show you an example of one of them? And Erica, that was a perfectly timed comment. The next one I'm going to show you is indeed on Indigenous people. So you can see there's no need for you to try and strain and read every line here, but you can see it's quite a wordy page. There's a lot of text there. And this is because it's for the 3rd level, the one that's out on Monday. So it's a slightly older learner, a more mature, more sophisticated student, but there's still that code to be cracked. You can see it there in that crossword at the beginning. And we spoke about adaptability earlier. So this is one that if time is a little bit tight in your lessons, because we don't have a lot of time to prepare, and sometimes we don't have enough time to teach either, do we? You could maybe flip your classroom a bit here, and you could perhaps give those items, those sentences, paragraphs, sorry, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, you can maybe give them to your students before class, and they read them, do a little bit of work with them at home, and then they've got the crossword, that enigma to solve within class time. It's up to you how you adapt it and how you use it. So let's move on to our next letter, which is the letter O for observation. So what can you see and observe in how your students handle escape games? Because for me, it's these freer, semi-structured activities. It's these where we get to see how competent our students are with their language skills, how autonomous they are, how confident they are. We can observe an awful lot about them as a learner and as a person. So it's not just language, it's all those interpersonal skills, all those life skills that we get to see. So in fact, here's a list of some of the observable skills in escape games, because we know we've got the language skills, whether that's target language, an item that you specifically want to teach, or emergent language, some lovely language that arises from the activity. We know we've got those language skills, but we've also got this list of other skills. And this isn't an exhaustive list by any means. There are additional skills that I think we could add there. So my advice would be to simply observe what comes up during your escape games. What can you observe and learn about your students' characters? What are they good at? What do they enjoy? What can you praise them for and encourage them? And what do students need more help with? How can you provide that? And for me, this isn't something that you need to do in this sort of assessment or this thinking, this observation. It doesn't have to be very formal or very time consuming. You can do it just taking a note during a lesson, or after the lesson, you just have a nice cup of tea and you have a think about what went well, what didn't, how different people coped. It can be as simple and as short as that, just a little chance to observe and think. So we've got time to move on to our next letter, and it's time for another tiny little riddle for you. So it's the letter U. Can you complete this very simple little puzzle? Oh, you're such fast typer. So I think Katerina, again, that was perhaps you that was there first. So you've all got the answer. Thank you very much. Super simple puzzle. So the vowel U sounds like the pronoun you. Because we've talked about the benefits of escape games for our students, that huge list of skills that we just looked at, I also just wanted to take a moment, excuse me, to think about the benefits of escape games for you and to focus on the teacher. And I said earlier, it's these freer, semi-structured activities that really allow us to see how our students are doing. But I think this is also true for us and our professional development. So how are we doing? It's an opportunity to see about our professional development when we use these type of activities. So I think there's 4 main ways that escape games will help you with you and your professional development. So peer observation, I'm a big fan of this. So you can swap with a fellow teacher, and it doesn't matter who it is. Maybe it's someone with years and decades of experience. Maybe it's someone who's just started. Doesn't really matter. I think whatever their level of experience, they will have something useful to share with you. And you can ask for quite a directed observation. So you can ask for specific criteria. You want to look at how you give instructions or how you give feedback, for example. Or it's a non-directed observation. They're going to comment on whatever they want. 2, self-reflection. So just as I said a moment ago, if you're not in a school or any particular network, if you're maybe teaching by yourself, just use self-reflection. So it could just be a cup of tea and having a think after your lesson. Think about what you did well, what you could do better the next time. Or you could do it as a journal, as a video diary, any way that works for you in order to give you time to think and process and plan. You could adapt one of these escape games. So you've got 60 to choose from across those 3 levels. So what you could do is just look at the language in that escape game and write a simple, short, gap-fill exercise for your students to practice the grammar. Or if some lovely emergent language came out, maybe you can write another short exercise or a long one to practice that emergent language. And that helps to develop our skills as materials writers, because I think all teachers are materials writers. Finally, that last point, write or create your own escape game. So why not try this with a colleague? And you could just do another paper escape game like the ones in these books, or if you've got a super classroom, super school, super local area, maybe there's a way you can physically create an escape game. If you do that, you have to share it with us and tell us how it went though, because I would personally love to do one of those. So we're moving on to our final letter now. We've had B for bonding, R for ready to go, E for equality, A, adaptability, K was knowledge, O, observation, U, your professional development. So the last letter then, we've got a T. Any ideas for what that might be? What would you like to suggest? I wonder if you'll guess this one. I'm going to say that I don't think you will, but you might do. You might surprise me. Trust, team, teaching, team technique. Ooh, these are good. They're not the same as mine. I love each and every one. Yeah, team's a really good one. Maybe I should have used that. Yeah, okay. Tension, that's nice. Interesting. Team spirit, Yep, teaching, teamwork. Okay, timing. Yes, that's an interesting one. All of these are lovely. Okay, shall I show you the T that I chose? So I've gone for a big one. Translanguaging. It's a final letter, so I had to choose quite a big word for this one. Let me, however, make it simple and just say that for this webinar, we'll say that translanguaging is the ability to move fluidly between languages and the pedagogical approach where teachers support this ability. So rather than having our students separate their L1, their first language, and English in the class, you might allow both, or you might even encourage both if that's appropriate for your situation. So I'm going to twist this definition a little so I can talk about whether you want to allow monolingual classes to use their L1 or not. And could I ask you, what do you think? Should we use the L1 or not? Yes, no, maybe? I'm going to type in my feeling, which is a maybe. Lower grades can use L1. That's interesting. Yeah, definitely, Emily. Depends on the learn. Sometimes depends on the complexity. Yeah, exactly, Donatella. L1 gives security. I think that's such an important point, Sandra. Yes, and it is about developing those interpersonal skills, that confidence, and if it helps, why not? It depends on the goal. Yeah, exactly. Grammar explanations. Yeah, I think that is a really good way of just avoiding confusion and getting the pace going in your lesson. Absolutely. So, interesting. So I don't think anyone said no, which is pleasing, because I kind of think my short answer to whether you should use the L1 or not, it's your decision. You know your class, you know your name, the aims, you know the objectives, you know if your students maybe need that bit of encouragement and a bit of trust and a bit of help, and you can provide it. The long answer to whether you should use L1 or not, well, I guess you've got to consider sort of three main things. These are the things that I try to remember if I'm in a situation where I can use L1. I would say allow a maximum number of L1 uses per lesson or per escape game. So have a number in your head, maybe 5 for each student, something like that. Or you might just want to note the L1 that students use, and then you can provide the English translation for them. So then you've expanded the language a bit, which is great for your students, and you've brought back in the target language, English. But whatever you do, I think this final one's the most important, is an aim to decrease L1 over time. So that might be, as some of you have said, beginners, lower levels might need to use it more, but as we ascend the levels and go up, let's aim to decrease that first language reliance so that students are getting more practice. It's up to you though. So we're approaching the ends. Breakout. Can I ask you if you remember the technique, the point for each of those letters? So B was for bonding, R was for, and bonding, we looked at that group cohesion with Dornier and those 6 ways of developing it. R was ready to go, fab, yeah. So for that one, we looked at the breakout series, 3 levels, 20 escape games within each escape game having 3 worksheets. Oh, someone was super quick there with their A. So for A was for adaptability. So that's thinking about when you're going to use the escape game. Maybe it's before language a point, maybe it's after language a point, and it's how you're going to use it. Are you going to use all of the escape game in one lesson, or one worksheet across a series, or you're going to do a carousel, or you're going to do a whole session on it, whatever works for you. So B, R, E, have we jumped over E? We have. E was, thank you, Bianca, straight in there, super quick time. So equality, and that's when we just looked at some examples of the different ways of representing different people and equality, showing it through escape games. So we looked at some family units, some sports, different countries, that sort of thing. Then we had adaptability, and then we had K, and a lot of you guessed the word for K. Can you remember it now? Knowledge. So Erica was in there first. Thank you so much. And that's when we looked at the 3 lists of topics going across the 3 levels. So you saw how students, their language skills will develop. They'll look at the target language, the emergent language, and they'll improve their world knowledge across all those different topics. And you chose a few topics that you liked there. So we've had B, R, E, A, K. Next letter is O. O for Erica and Bianca, super quick in there. And Hermione, thank you. So observation. So this was using escape games to just really watch your class, to almost take a step back. Because remember, you don't need to set up too much with these escape games. Give your students a situation, then sit back and observe. See how they handle it. See how their autonomy is developing, how their language skills are developing. If you need to pop in some L1. So that's that for observation. Then our next letter was U, which kind of gives you the example word as well, which is the letter U for the pronoun you. So having looked at what you can observe in your students, it's you, your teacher, and 4 ways of developing your professional development as a teacher. So I really think, as I said, it's those freer, semi-structured activities where we have got less control. That's where we see how good our students are and how we're developing as a teacher. And then our last letter was the really, really long one, T, the big word for translanguaging, which was a sneaky way to say, let's think about L1. Do we want to use it? Do we not? And as you've said, maybe with lower levels, maybe to explain grammar points, maybe to make things easier. There's a place for it, absolutely. It's up to you, your choice. Your class, you know their aims, you know their objectives, you choose that. So we have looked at escape games in the breakout series, and we did that definition where in your 4 groups, you worked out what those missing words were with a puzzle. We've looked at the techniques and points to remember, and I'm very impressed that you remember them all and type them on with perfect accuracy. Thank you very much. We've gone through that breakout, the acronym, and then here we are at the final stage, the question and answer stage. So now it's my turn to turn things over to you and ask if you have any questions.